Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. My name is Jeff Overmars. I'm a communications advisor at the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, and it's my pleasure to welcome you and to moderate and host the discussion today. Um, I do want to start by acknowledging that with deep respect for the Mi'kmaq people, the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission acknowledges that we are located in Chibuktuk on the unceded ancestral territory of Mi'kma'ki. This land is covered by the sacred peace and friendship treaties signed with the British Crown in the early 1700s. We honor the profound historical and spiritual connections of the Mi'kmaq people to this land, where their ancestors' legacies endure. As treaty people, we are bound by the promises made in these important treaties, guiding us in mutual respect and reconciliation. The Commission is committed to working together in harmony with respect for the Mi'kmaq people, their culture, and their rights. We're gathered here today for an important discussion around a topic that is on everybody's minds across the country, and in particular here in Nova Scotia today. We'll be focusing some of the discussion on Nova Scotia. Um, the impetus for the discussion was an opportunity that came about as a result of a partnership that the Commission began about a year and a half ago with the Atlantic International Film Festival, which we're referring to as Human Rights on Screen, where we're able to bring uh, films that have been part of the Atlantic Film Festival program to members of the public in Nova Scotia for free via AIF's online screening platform. This session is focused on the film What We Dreamed of Then, which had its world premiere at AIF on Friday of last week. This film is powerful, it's rare, it's done in such an artistic and thoughtful and respectful way, and it really brings to the screen the issue and the experiences of people living unhoused. Um, I'll introduce our filmmaker in just a moment. This session will be recorded. It will be available on the Commission's YouTube channel after it's been completed. And folks are able to go to the Commission's website currently and register to get your free ticket to watch this film online starting tomorrow, the 17th, and you'll have that opportunity until the 21st of September. So if you've not seen the film, we'll try not to spoil anything for you, but you're really encouraged to take advantage of this opportunity and see this wonderful film. We've got three panelists with us today. We've got some pre-written questions that have been circulated, which we'll use as guideposts for the discussion, but we'll follow it where it needs to go. A few bits of housekeeping. We've got ASL interpreters with us today. We've got captions enabled, so you can click the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen to turn those captions on. And while we will be focusing on some questions that we've written down, we would encourage you as the conversation unfolds, if you have a question for our panelists, please drop it in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. And if time permits, we'll turn to those questions near the end of the program. I want to start with Tanya Ellsworth because it's her birthday today. And Tanya is joining us from Sydney, Cape Breton. Tanya is a resident of Dominion and has graciously offered to speak on some of her lived experiences of being unhoused outside Sydney at a time when Nova Scotia was experiencing some terrible weather. And thank you so much, Tanya, for being here. Folks can find an article that Tanya was featured in around the terrible winter storm that occurred some time ago. With Tanya in Sydney Cape Breton is Megan Peters, who works for the Ally Center. Thank you both, Tanya and Megan, for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Also with us on the screen is Marie-Josée Houle. Marie-Josée, I should say, is Canada's federal housing advocate. And Canada's federal housing advocate monitors the federal or the national housing strategy, identifies systemic housing issues affecting vulnerable populations and those experiencing houselessness, and recommends changes to laws, policies, and programs to improve housing outcomes. Marie, I believe, is joining us from her home outside of Ottawa. Thank you, Marie-Josée, for being here.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, Taylor Olson. Taylor, it's your film that, again, brought us here today. It was shared with us when AIFE was looking at their program for the coming festival, which is happening now. And it stood out as a no-brainer when it comes to a partner on this particular topic of human rights on screen. I've had the benefit of seeing it. It's an incredible story. As I said, you wrote it, directed it, you starred in it, and you just came away from the world premiere on Friday. So thank you for making time to be here with us today.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you.
I do want to start with a question for you, Taylor. Could you please tell us about what led you to want to make this film, your personal experience, and why the experiences of unhoused people shape this story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when I was 19, I had a van and I had a job coaching summer swimming in BC. And so I drove across the country in that van and I didn't have, enough money for rent for that summer. So I thought, okay, well, great. I'll just convert the back of the van to have a mattress and I'll, stay in here for the summer. It'll be great. And it was a lot more difficult than I thought it was going to be when I set out to do that. Of course, I went to it very naively. So I experienced that summer while coaching swimming, and then the next summer I was in Halifax. I was working with a group that was working with Amnesty International, and we would see, like on the way to work, I was walking to work, I'd see houseless folks all the time in Halifax, and so I volunteered with a local church that was going around handing out supplies to folks and just sitting down and chatting. And, they had a certain mission for their conversations. Mine was different. I just wanted to get to know people and connect and talk to people and maybe end up talking to people that I'd seen multiple times downtown. And, maybe subconsciously my experience living in the van sort of led me to want to do that. I don't know. Hard to say. But then years later, my partner, who's also a filmmaker, was in a play at Neptune. And there was this young guy who I talked to outside Neptune who's houseless as well. And we just got to know each other. I'd be waiting for my partner and we got talking. I'd see him there almost every day. I picked my partner up. And then months later, COVID hit. And I saw him months into COVID. And he was a different person. Like he was emaciated. Like he was lost so much weight, which was an indicator to me that access to everything had been gone. And we started talking, and access to washrooms. Washrooms were closed. Everything closed. Access to water, obviously a human right. Because you could go into Tim Hortons and ask for a cup of water before. Couldn't do that anymore. And also the stores were sort of purposely keeping people out, and so all of that together, those experiences sort of collided to think about, okay, well, when I was younger and my family fell apart, what if I had no support system, and had sort of fallen through the cracks and ended up living in my van? What would that have maybe looked like? And so explored it through that lens of what's it like for someone who is in the midst of their family falling apart, who becomes, in this case, invisibly housed, working as a swim coach at the same time. What would that look like? Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Taylor. Um, the film's been out in the world a little bit now. You had the premiere on Friday. What are the early reception that you're hearing from folks that have viewed the film?
It was a lovely response. It was a great crowd, very kind crowd, and I think people connect to, what I gather from the response is that people do really connect to an individual's story. So, like, the goal of this film was to create empathy, to create connection. I think people connected with Gideon. Gideon in the film makes a variety of choices that can be frustrating, but at the same time, they really connect with that person and that experience. And I think, it just kind of, for those folks, hopefully lift the veil behind people who are either, living in their cars or in tents or couch surfing, that sort of world. Yeah.
Yeah, I really hope a lot more people get to see the film. Thank you, Taylor. Tanya, you've had a personal experience living unhoused in Cape Breton, and you've also had an opportunity to view this film. What was it like to see a story like this on screen?
The story in the film is a little different than my story alone, but there were so many things that happened in the film that I could relate to that like made me think about living on the streets myself. For instance, him picking up the bottles at the very first when he was singing and dancing with the headphones. Instantly, like that grabbed my heart because I remember personally me going up the highway and doing it. It was never like a sad thing picking them up. It was always like happy dancing around, knowing that like that money there for the bottles that was going to feed me or get me water for me and my cats for the next couple of days. Like, so I really related to that. I think there needs to be a lot more films like this. I feel like this film showed more of how he ended up homeless, but like I think more people need to see that how it's only one split decision. Anybody can be like two steps away from becoming homeless. All it takes is one wrong decision, and then everything plays out in the wrong way for you, kind of thing.
Yeah, we spoke yesterday, and you had spoken a little bit about how the story depicted really well the amount of effort that goes into just daily living and the steps
Yeah.
you need to take to sort of just survive in any given day. Are you able to recall any scenes from the film also that would have kind of reminded you of some of your experiences while you were
I know in the scene he's in his van and there's kids that are throwing stuff at his van and stuff. I could relate personally to that because I remember after I finally left my tent and went into the shelter, we were all congregated in one area outside, like because that's where we were staying. So people would know that we were there. They would drive by throwing like eggs or bottles at us, like tormenting us, knowing that like oh they're homeless, like they're less than people. So they would torment us that way. Like I related to that a lot. And then it's just the I found at the very end when he walked into the encampment camp, the first thing that was handed to him was a tarp and a bottle of water. And I said, that's so important because you can't think about anything else when you're on the streets. Like the first half of my day is spent worrying about where am I getting my candles to keep warm and my water just to be able to survive for the rest, to last for the rest of the night. So when you're waking up the next day, you're not thinking, what am I going to do in the future? You're not thinking even 2 days ahead. You're thinking about how am I going to survive through this night?
Yeah, and you mentioned that when the snowstorm hit in Sydney, you didn't really know it was going to be as bad as it
No,
was.
I was very unprepared because I was after going through 100-mile winds. I was after going through plenty of snowstorms. But where my tent was set up, I didn't want to be around other people so that they could walk into my tent. Like I was more private, so I had mine hidden far into the woods, like off of an access road into the woods off of that. So I was pretty far in there. So when they were saying snowstorm, I'm after going through snowstorms. So I still only prepared for that night as if I was going to be able to go get my resources. Like because each day I would get up and I would go try to get bus tickets, and then I would go down to the food um, to be able to eat at the food shelf, like for food services and stuff like that. So when yeah, or going to I would go up to the hospital to Tim Hortons and charge my laptop because that's all I had for access. I didn't have a phone, so I would do that each night. So when the storm hit, plus I visit the drugstore daily, so like to go without everything, it was pretty scary to know that I'm all the way in the woods in that much snow and only had like a bottle and a half of water, which I didn't want to drink because I had my cat there with me, and I like you know what I mean. It's what do you do?
Yeah.
But you managed to call in the CBC.
I did. I said I must have been awful scared for me to do that because I've hid it for so long. Like I didn't want anybody to know, but I actually thought I thought I was going to die out there in the woods like that. That was the biggest snowstorm like people in houses went through. So for me being in the middle of the woods, and it wasn't until 4 days after that storm that I actually came inside indoors.
Yeah, it sounds like something in a movie, to be honest
Yeah,
with
that's
you.
what when I think back to it now, like it's like I don't know how I lived through it. It blows my mind. I think like it feels like it's a story being made up, not real life that I actually lived.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for you sharing like you did with the CBC at the time, but also being here today to be able to shine a light on your personal story as well. And we'll hear more from you as we go along in the discussion. Tanya, thank you so much. Marie-Josée, you've also had the opportunity to view this film prior to today. I guess on the heels of Tanya sharing her story and having seen that film, how does seeing a story like this depicted on the big screen? How does that land with you?
I have had the privilege in my position as federal housing advocate to speak to so many people experiencing homelessness, people who are precariously housed, and people in encampments from coast to coast to coast. And it's always harrowing. It's always I'm always struck by how resilient people are and how brave they are, but and how human they are. And so but it's never easy, never easy. Like I found that this film is not easy to sit through. And Tanya, hearing your story it always kills me. But you know what I found this film is really the humanized depiction of someone, not just an individual, his family too. That that's really likable and went down this terrible trajectory with no real way out. And it shows, as Tanya said, this can happen to anyone. It shows that homeless encampments and homelessness are a systemic issue and not just about failure of the individual. It's not just, well, if they only pull themselves up by their bootstraps or just you should get a job. And along the way, in this film, Taylor explored many other themes that also touch many other people who are unhoused or experiencing housing precarity. I a thought crossed my mind about the TV show Breaking Bad. Like, if only it happened in Canada, there wouldn't be, and there wouldn't be a Breaking Bad because he would have universal health care and it wouldn't have gone down this path. And I feel that way a little bit about this family, is that if only they had a better safety net like they do in Norway, where they have free post-secondary education with daycares on campus, and so that people and families don't need to choose between whose career is going to be supported or whose education is going to be supported, and that they can have a family at the same time, and or that the breakdown of a family leads to poverty or makes people that much more vulnerable, and not being able to ride out the breakdown of the family unit, that a lack of adequate basic income, again, isn't in place to help people ride through really difficult times. And I think it was a beautiful depiction too of people face the most difficult times usually because of a breakdown of a relationship or a family unit or death. I've seen that working front lines, and we can't downplay the important role that relationships play in all of our lives for our emotional and not just financial survival and resilience. And that's, it's a way into vulnerability and precarity, but it's also a way out, because housing's not just four walls and a roof. We need the relationships to be successful in our housing as well. I love that, you know, different experiences of people are depicted with different support systems. So the difference between Gideon and his wife, or his soon-to-be ex-wife, they Gideon didn't have the family support. Mind you, hers seemed to be a little bit toxic. Um, and she seemed to be trapped in it sometimes as well. I love that it touched a little bit on financialization of housing, which is a real occurrence here in Canada and, all over the place, really, which is the disappearance of housing that's affordable to people, because housing is being treated as an investment and not just a basic need. There was a lack of consistency of tenancy rights, which we saw. I'm spoiling this film, aren't I? I'm sorry. It's it's hard to talk about it without pinpointing certain things, but we saw the tenancy rights being violated, which had a negative impact on Gideon. We saw aspects of toxic masculinity, where Gideon is the provider. He needs to be the strong one. He's constantly masking that he's okay. He needs to keep a brave face, and then when he did ask for help, and again, I'm not going to give this away, it's his father-in-law came to his rescue with a ton of judgment. and saving face with friends, and then there's the toxicity of having to keep up with the Joneses. And again, I won't elaborate on that. But I love too, Taylor, that you depicted the impact of COVID. You know, there is a lot of hidden homelessness out there, and there's so many paths to homelessness, and it's not a criminal issue, but it's often treated as one. And and I also love that you depicted that in encampments, for some people, they finally find a sense of community. Not all. And you also made it very clear that shelters are not the answer.
Thank you, Marie-Josée. It just goes to show there's so much to unpack from the depiction that was shared on screen and so much complexity. Taylor, Marie-Josée did touch on it a little bit, but based on previous explorations on this issue, we're aware that there are several stereotypes and discriminatory attitudes towards those who are unhoused. As an artist and a storyteller, can you share your thoughts on film and the arts as a medium to transform these assumptions and to potentially contribute to human rights discussions?
Yeah, absolutely. To do what I get to do is a huge privilege, right? Like, you get to take, a fictionalized story that is based on so many people's reality, and then it's also a responsibility to then try to do justice by those people that, for me, I truly care about. And so I think what I love about the arts and why I think it is a vital thing in our society, and I don't want to see it get cut from education. And I've got a 11-year old daughter. I don't want to see the arts get cut because I think um, storytelling in general offers us an opportunity for this empathy, for connection. That's the whole job of this work. And through connecting with people, I think instead of people becoming a statistic, like it's easy to look at statistics and be like, wow, that's brutal. All right, okay, what do I got? I make some coffee and move on with my day, right? What I hope our film or artists in general can offer is an opportunity to walk a mile in someone else's shoes and to be challenged by their experience. And so I think that was one of the goals of the film. We didn't want Gideon to be this perfect person either. Gideon is flawed. Gideon makes mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. We all make mistakes. We all do things that we hide and keep to ourselves because we go, wow, that was, a little bit of shame around that decision or what I did. So it's important, I think, in this case, we have an opportunity to show, hopefully, a fully realized human that we can both like, love, feel very frustrated by, and at the end of the day, create some empathy. I think that's what we can do.
Yeah, I really look forward to your future films, Taylor. You've got a track record of focusing on stories that are important and not shying away from challenges. So congratulations on this film. Tanya, while you were living in the tent, we spoke about this yesterday a little bit. It like you're moving into a tent actually marked the beginning of a new chapter in your life that came very positive. I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about why you moved into a tent and how that actually kind of kickstarted this incredible story and where you landed now.
So what had happened was like I had my own apartment and everything when I lived in the Glace Bay area, but I always had it as kind of like an open house where anybody could come in and out. So just from doing that, the place got ransacked basically, and I was also intertwined with drugs at the time. So where I had people coming and going, what actually led to the event to me going in the tent, I fell asleep one night at a house and a man came in and kicked me in my face and broke my face. So when I woke up, I realized like nobody cared that I was after getting kicked out of the house because they were too scared of the guy, kind of thing. So it made me like, as bad as it was, it kind of gave me a wake up to realize these people, like I kind of get like I'm opening my house to them. I have to get away, kind of get away from them in order to do anything, or I'm going to end up dead eventually, kind of thing. So I left and I was staying with the next, and here he lost his apartment like a week later. So we just moved. I like took everything. It was midnight. Actually, we called a cab and got a cab up to the woods. I was never even in these woods before, and just went into the woods. And the first night, just spent the first night under the trees, and then eventually, like I set up my camp up there. But as bad as it was, like I said, it was kind of a wake up. But at the time, like I hid it from everybody. Like Gideon in the story, to keep up appearances. Like he went so far to keep up appearances. That's the same way I was. I was coming down here to the Ally Center and getting help for them without them even knowing that I was unhoused, living in a tent. Like it took a long time before I opened up and even told anybody myself. I don't know if it was more I was embarrassed or if I was just ashamed that I ended up in that spot, because all the years, like I was always the house where people, if they had nowhere to go, could come and stay and stuff. And then here I am with nowhere to go. So I kind of felt like embarrassed almost on my part.
And you shared that while you were so focused on the just keeping what you needed every day, you also had a plan. You began to sort of make a list of things that you wanted to achieve from that new start, from that
Yeah,
time you spent.
I knew what I wanted to do. Like when people when I was first asked, I was coming around the Ally Center and they have um, a man, like a worker, a community worker that comes around and he was asking me like, what do you want to do in your future? Now I'm thinking like get something to eat, you know what I mean? Have warm blankets tonight. And he's like, no, like if you had everything covered, like what would you want to do? So I was talking at the time I was after living because of my face getting broke with no teeth. So I was going around during this whole time with not even a tooth in my head. So that made it look like, so to tell someone I'm homeless with no teeth, like, you know what I mean? It would have looked terrible, like kind of thing. So, but he asked me that. So I started thinking, and he's like, well, in order to go to school, what would you need? So I started saying like, I need my teeth. When I was on drugs, I contacted hepatitis. So I used the services here. I went through all the treatment. That was something I need to take care of my health. I wanted to do my treatment. I wanted to get my teeth done and then eventually be able to like get a home and then worry about going to school, because you can't even think about going to school without your daily living, like your daily things that you need to live. So eventually it took a long time, but eventually like I started knocking it off. Like I got my teeth done, I completed my treatment, I end up with a house. Now I just found out the last couple of days I'm moving from the unit I'm in now. I got an actual home that we're moving into, like on a dead end street. Like we're so excited. Everything ended up working out, but it took a lot. There was many times I could have just like there's many times I felt like I'm done. Like I don't even like trying to get my teeth done. I kept coming into like complications or like everything that I did. There was like it's like I do one good thing, there's 10 bad things said against me. So like it's so easy to just give up and say no. Like, it's too hard, or like you know what I mean. Especially when you're putting your trust in people that you don't even know to help you on the street. Like so when things are going wrong, I'm thinking, are these people actually even here to help me? Like are they going to help me, or is this a real? Like really, it did all pan out in the end, but it was a lot to go through for sure.
And you also shared that your daughter just turned 7 months old
Um,
recently. There's been so much positivity in your life and so much of it due to your resilience and taking the steps that you needed to take to make things work out. Thank you so much, Tanya. Marie-Josée, a new report commissioned by your office and penned by housing policy expert Dr. Carolyn Witzman warns that Canada is falling far behind of meeting the targets set out in the National Housing Strategy. At the current pace of building deeply affordable homes, it would take more than 1,000 years to meet the goal of eliminating houselessness and creating housing for those that need it. We also know that previous reports from your office that it is often those who are most vulnerable in our society who are at the at the greatest risk of being unhoused. Could you please speak a little bit about the urgent human rights needs and the implications of this reality?
Absolutely. Well, I think the first thing to say is that the solution to homelessness or being unhoused is adequate housing. So it's not a transitional shelter. It's not having to prove that you're able to live on your own. It is just put you in housing and housing that meets your needs. And that's different for everyone. And And then what we know, if we're going to be very honest about our neighbors and the people that are that surround us in our lives, is that people who are already vulnerable will be the hardest hit by any kind of disaster, whether it's an economic crisis, a flood, fire, pandemic. We're not all in the same boat. Some of us are in leaky rowboats while some of us are in luxury yachts. And this report identifies the need. And government, all levels of governments are grappling with, well, how much is the need? We're busy studying, but you can't address what you don't know or what you don't acknowledge. And we felt that a lot of the supply discussion around, we just need more housing. That's all we need, and everything will fix itself and will balance itself out, was kind of living in some kind of mythical land, and when we did more digging around what these numbers meant, we realized that people experiencing homelessness, students, people living in congregate living were not even counted in this needs assessment. And governments need to start with the reality of the situation. So like I said, you can't address what you don't know or what you don't acknowledge. But, the other thing is that wealth doesn't trickle down. If there's anything should have learned by now over the past 35 years, is that trickle down economics doesn't work, and that we need government intervention to ensure that no one gets left behind. And leaving things to the private market won't do that in the case of housing, and especially with exponentially growing trend that basic needs such as housing and food and medicine are being treated as investments rather than basic needs. And we needed concerted government investments to address those issues. Otherwise, those of us who are in mid-sized yachts just keep on trucking along, even though we might struggle, and we're not seeing the people in leaky rowboats around us.
Thank you, Marie-Josée. I do want to note that we're moving right along in terms of the time. We're plowing through the questions, but quite quickly. So we will have time for questions from those that have tuned in online. If you've got a question for any of the panelists, please do drop it in the Q&A. And I'll also carve out a little time for panelists to maybe think of questions they might have for one another. I think we've got a great group of people in the room with us today, so we'll make some space for that. Taylor, what would you like people to take away from this film now that it's out there in the world?
I think the biggest goal is to recognize the humanity in Gideon, and hopefully that creates some sort of action to actually at least think about the housing crisis we're in and unhoused folks. Because I think it's so easy, like, you know, living in 2025 right now, life is a little wild. Like, I think we can all recognize that, like, our access to, like, our phones to, like, all the crazy stuff that's happening out there is like boom, 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 24/7. I don't think our brains can keep up. I don't think our hearts can keep up. I don't think our bodies can keep up, and I think it's just overwhelming to live in this world right now for so many people, unless you choose to put this away and ignore it. But then that's exactly what you're doing. Like, you're ignoring it. Like, it's like, okay, I don't watch the news anymore because it's too sad. It's like, well, okay, maybe sometimes the news is dramatizing things to have viewers, but at the same time, these things are happening in our world, right? And I fall victim to that, being like, oh man, it's hard to, you got a family, you got to pay your bills. Like, it's hard to think about other people sometimes. And so I guess at the end of the day, I hope people who do see it start to think about their community more and recognize that people who are unhoused are part of our community. Like, it's not just the people on our street living in the houses beside us. These people are part of the fabric of our community. If they're hurting, we're hurting too. And sorry, I'm an emotional person. I'm a sensitive person. That's why I made this movie. But it's just about caring about people.
Well said, Taylor. Thank you for being vulnerable and for channeling that emotion and caring into such a beautiful film. Tanya, is there a main message that you would like to see people receive as they work to continue to educate themselves and others on this?
I think it's very important to have movies like this out there just to give people, put the thoughts in people's ideas. People that are so not affected by it in their daily lives, like to watch a movie, maybe it might make them second guess or think about how easy it is. Like the main thing, one wrong choice or like mixed up decision you make, and that plays out the events for the rest of your, could be your downfall. Like that easy. Like, you know what I mean? It's so easy for your path to change, and it can happen to anybody. A lot of people think, oh no, not me, because they're not affected by it, or maybe they don't know anybody affected by it. So I think more movies like this would make people realize that it's real, it's actually going on. Like, especially like how Marie said earlier, like we need more government supports. Like we actually do. Like when I was in the woods, that's what made me call the radio when I heard the mayor on the radio saying, we talked to the shelters, everybody's indoors, there's no people unhoused, and I'm sitting there in the middle of the woods in this storm, and I'm thinking in my head, if I'm here, how many other people are here? Like, how many other people are out there? And that's what, like, I picked up the phone, I called, I said, you can't say that there's nobody out there. I'm sitting here in a tent in the middle of the woods right now, and if I'm here, how many other people are out there too that you don't? Just because we hide it doesn't mean that we're not there. Like, you know what I mean? A lot of people hide it, but we're still there. We're like, you know what I mean? Doesn't mean that it's not happening.
Yeah, so well said, Tanya. And thank you for standing up and for phoning in and for showing up here today and for all that you've been doing to advocate and speak up.
Am I able to say one thing?
Megan, please.
I just want to say, thank you very much for making a film like this. As an organization that, I'm sorry, it's gonna be me. I'm gonna get upset. As an organization that loves and cares for so many people on a daily basis, you know, Tanya's story is incredible, but her survival is rare. We've lost many people.
Since I've been out here, there's been like, I can't even count on two hands how many people that we've lost since I've been just on the street, like, and filming my place.
And I think
like people that I live side by side with every single day, and they're just gone. You know? And it's like not many people know that we're all out there. So like to lose someone in the homeless community, other people, like it's just, oh, there's another one gone kind of thing. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah, the deal with the losing the person in the first place, but then other people just not really caring because they weren't an able-bodied citizen, I guess.
That's what we're so proud to have someone so passionate and fury like Tanya to be able to come and bring, because she has so much love, and out of everything she's been through, she brings so much love through it. It's easy to have a lot of anger and like hatred.
Well, yeah, like
when I see it.
When I called the radio station in the tent, I literally, like, to say it, like, I thought I was going to die. I didn't think there was no way I was making it out of that tent. Like, honest to God, like, even after the storm, I didn't think I was going to make it out because it took so long. Like, it took 3 hours just to get to the support road, and then another, like, over 3 hours just to get to the main access road. Like, that was exhausting. But for then, like with the government, when I called, they said, oh, we sent out resources to check on her. That wasn't true. I was there. It was 4 days after the storm before I came here. And not one of them even called to know if I was here. Like, the Ally Center knew I was here because they were the ones looking out for me. But, like, as far as the government, I could have been net up in that tent and they would have never known in the least. Like, so what are people supposed to do in situations like that, you know?
Yeah. Megan, do you want to take, I just want to invite you to talk a little bit more about the Ally Center and to take the opportunity to speak about the work that you do.
Work you do.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was thinking of Tanya there for a second. So we're a local harm reduction organization that has a full functioning health clinic. We just got into housing ourselves, so we run a pallet village with 35 transitional houses for people that are experiencing homelessness. We have the highest acuity of folks, people that are hard to house. So we get our folks, and then this year we were able to open Eleanor's Court. She's named of one of our beautiful friends who passed away in the struggle. So we are able to deeply affordable permanent housing for our folks. We have 25 units of our folks. It's come as you are. And it's we love you at every juncture of your journey. So we're able to do that. And I think we've made a huge difference. Tanya ended up getting a place before we could get her hooked up because she's resilient, and she was going to be one of the first ones. Her and Eleanor, and then she two very different paths. but I think they drive a lot of the work we do every day to make sure that, that we keep everybody on whatever journey they want to be on, but they have support. And a lot of times we talk about family. Sometimes family don't have the capacity or can't. So that's why organizations like us exist, because we become the family. Yeah. And we want to be able to help. It doesn't mean their family doesn't love them any less, or, sometimes people worry about that, but it's just having that hand to guide you along the way, or just knowing someone's going to catch you if you fall. And no matter whatever path or journey you're going on, that's the right one, because you're going to tell us where you need to go. And that's all we're about.
That's a good, you guys, like, you meet us where we're at. You know what I mean? You don't try to change us or anything. Like, wherever we're at in life, like, they'll meet us there.
And then we're lucky to have Tanya's that, sometimes it's hard to be like, are we doing the right things? And then, they come in with these amazing stories that nobody could have made but themselves to do the work they do. So we're just a helping hand. They're the ones that do all the work. But sometimes it's frustrating because there's not a lot of supports. Yeah. They try really hard. And, like, I've watched Tanya get hit so many foul balls and she still ran home. So many people just, stay out in the field because it's just too hard. It's just, you're getting too many bad hits constantly. I know that you're a lot of support for a lot of folks now. Like, you've become your own peer support, because a lot of people go to her and see how she's overcame it all. It's incredible. So we're thankful to have this organization, but much more thankful to have people that come here. And, like, if we didn't have the people coming here, we wouldn't be able to do the work. So having them trust us is the most important thing to us.
As somebody who's become a support person for other folks, what is some advice that you give to people that are finding themselves unhoused?
For every good thing that happens, there's probably going to be 10 more things to knock you down. So be prepared for it.
Do you, having gone through the experience of keeping it quiet and not telling people or reaching out for support, do you have advice on, is it a good thing to hide it?
No, I probably wish I had to reach out for support, but there wasn't really, like, that's what everybody said, reach out for support. I was still getting the supports like they offered here, just without telling them I was homeless at the time. Like, there wasn't really much more available down here to reach out to. Yeah. We don't have many. This is pretty much, this and Loaves and Fishes are basically the only, well, they have, like, women's shelter and stuff, but they don't really help on the daily living basics.
Yeah.
But once I opened up and told them, like, I was on the streets, it was easier to, like, because I needed things like tarps and, like, things that you would never think of, like, need tarps and candles and stuff to be able to live, like, to make it through that night. So, like, this was the only place, and they're going on donation. So, like, not all the times that you could get those things.
Yeah. Thank you. Marie-Josée, could you speak a bit about your office's current call to action for the various levels of government when it comes to these issues, such as resourcing?
Absolutely. Well, boy, it's hard going from hearing from people with a lived experience, and I feel like, I'm gonna turn off the emotions and get to the clinical stuff. So I don't but doing exactly what we're doing now, hearing directly from people who are with lived experience is probably the most important part of finding any kind of solution. And that is the human rights-based approach. It's not only humanizing and putting a face, so it's not just, it's 5 people. But maybe it's not important enough because it's just 5 people. It should be 10 people or 10%, or really, honestly, one person is too many. But the people with lived experience are the ones who are the experts of their lives and their experiences, and they're the ones who hold the key to the solutions, because it's, a top-down approach never works. It's really hard for people to imagine the reality of these kinds of situations. And yet those are the people who are making the decisions and finding the solutions. That doesn't work. To build trust, why aren't people reaching out? Because there's shame, lack of trust. And if people don't recognize themselves in the solutions after there's been engagement, you're interrupting people's everyday lives, that where every single second, as Tanya has described to us, is about staying alive, is about survival. And then they might be engaged, but then they don't recognize themselves in the solution that's being proposed that directly affects them. That's not being genuine, and then they won't engage with you in the future, and it completely destroys any chance of trust and trust that any solution that will be proposed to them, that it applies to them. And especially, for example, if they've been told their whole lives that they won't qualify for subsidized housing because once upon a time they owed money, they owed arrears, and the regulation says that, if you owed arrears, or if you owed money to your subsidized housing provider, you will never get it again. And then someone approaches you and says, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be in an encampment. We'll get you into subsidized housing." They're they're not going to believe you, right? So that is the human rights based approach. So that is the first thing that needs to happen, is that piece around meaningful engagement. The second one is that all solutions need to be, in a human rights framework and treat it like the emergency that it is, that you dedicate all available funds and resources to those who need it the most as soon as possible. Again, my frustration with the government's supply conversation. If we just build more housing, wealth will trickle down and the affordability will magically happen. And we know that that's not true. And that all of the solutions and all public funds need to go to public good, and the public good is addressing those that need it the most and deal with it as a sense of the emergency that it is. All levels of government must work in collaboration to meet the goal of ending homelessness as soon as possible, and not let politics get in the way, and not with it won't happen if programs or funding only follow the political cycles. That good solutions, like I said, never come from a top-down approach. You need involvement of Indigenous governments and respect for Indigenous rights, including UNDRIP, the United Nations Declarations of the Rights of Indigenous People. And that's one thing this film talked about a lot. That's one thing that wasn't talked about, but I mean, we acknowledge it when we talk about a land acknowledgement, right? Especially as we move further west across this country, the face of homelessness is mostly Indigenous. For population that represents only 8% of the global population in this country, there is a gross disproportionate amount of representation of Indigenous folks in experiencing homelessness and housing precarity. And I grew up in Alberta. So for me, growing up, the face of homelessness or people who are using shelters was predominantly Indigenous. And it was very different and shocking for me when I moved to Ottawa. The other calls are to need to invest in continued data collection in order to measure outcomes, not just outputs. Government loves to measure doors and dollars when it comes to housing, but who's being housed? What's the impact on their lives? And so we need to measure the outcomes, and then we need to ensure transparency of all the spending with clear intentions so that the success can be measured and adjustments can be made when necessary, and that when these programs fail, that governments are held accountable. We need to also ban evictions on encampments on public lands. The forced relocation of people in encampments has proven time and time again that that doesn't address the problem, doesn't address the heart of the issue. It just is wishful thinking that the visible problem will just disappear. and it causes so much harm. We've seen people die. We've seen people get frostbite simply because their encampments were moved further away from the resources that they need for survival. And then when people choose encampments, and it's not an easy choice, but it's because it is the best choice of what's available to them at the time, that governments have a responsibility to respect the basic human rights for those people related to the health and safety, security, and dignity of the person. That there's a responsibility to provide heat and cooling, water, sanitation. Again, going back to the movie, the film where Gideon wakes up one morning and he just doesn't have access to a bathroom. I mean, think about that. And because we all need a bathroom. And that comes down to the end. Adequate housing really is the solution, not just shelter. In Canada, since enshrining the human right to housing in the 2019 National Housing Strategy Act, we can't default to the right to shelter anymore. There's no legal excuse to do it.
Thank you so much, Marie-Josée. And while you did get to the details of the calls to action, you didn't do it without emotion. So thank you very much for all that you do and for
Thank you.
being here with us today. We do have a question submitted from the viewers, and it's an interesting one. And it's for anyone. How do you think a film like this can move beyond awareness into sparking action?
I think movies like this, we talked about, there needs to be more of them put out there. If they started even in, like we discussed yesterday a little bit, in schools and showing them and stuff, people would be growing up more accepting and knowledgeable about these situations. Like, because I know me growing up, I didn't know anybody that was ever homeless or even know of homeless people around here, really. Like, you know what I mean? Obviously, there's always homeless people, but I was completely unaware of it. I didn't even know anybody that was homeless until I became homeless and on the streets. So I think like if it was put out there in the public more and it became more like a regular thing for people to see, that it'd be easier to approach it and help change the situations.
I can also answer too. I think in the world we live in, theoretical and practical are two different things. Although sometimes we act like they're the symbolic, but they're not. When you humanize life of what's happening, you've mentioned the news. It's hard to see what's happening in the world, so a lot of times we become alienated from it, and it makes it easier. But when we see the realities and we see people for humans and see that it could be us at any time, at any level of government, any level of just human existing, I think it makes things, and we do it every day. We normalize the things that people don't call normal.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as normal. What's chaos to the spider is normal to the fly. So for us, it's just getting to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable and understand that, life's difficult and rough, but we need to see it. And I think really just taking the moment and the time to make yourself vulnerable and stop being so alienated from it makes us make the change. And those planting the seeds is what makes the change. Mm-hmm. So I totally agree. Start off with the children and then get the rest of us cynical people later. But the children's going to make a lot of the changes too.
Taylor, Marie-Josée, any thoughts?
Oh. I've been doing a lot of media in the last couple weeks because of some reports on the treatment of people in encampments by municipalities. And, someone asked me today if there is, kind of empathy fatigue around people in encampments. And, for me, it's always don't be mad at the people in encampments. Be mad adding because we have encampments, right? And you want to get tough on governments. Demand that governments take action. Demand that governments take appropriate action to ensure that there is adequate housing for people experiencing homelessness and the supports that they need. A lot like Tanya is getting to help her journey into securing housing that meets her needs, and then to be and have the life that Tanya you want to have. And, to meet people where they're at, because only when people are secure and they're given a set of keys and they're told this, you can stay here as long as you want, people will finally be able to get out of survival mode, and then we'll be able to think about what it is that they want, and that's a hard step. As Tanya, you beautifully described it, how difficult that is to think about. Well, what do I want out of my life when all I'm thinking about is I need a bathroom right now, or am I going to eat, or how am I going to keep my cat and I safe tonight? And it's that shift. So demand adequate housing. Don't think about just shelter. Shelter is a default. Shelters are for emergencies, but housing is the real solution. So demand, get out there and talk to people, and don't let people dehumanize the experience of people experiencing homelessness. It's not, we can't be defaulting to solutions, to actions that will treat people as criminals, because it's not a criminal issue.
Thank you, Marie-Josée. Don't want to put you on the spot, Taylor, but I will open the space up to either contribute to that.
Yeah.
Or yeah, go ahead.
I mean, these are the experts, so I'm just grateful to be able to listen to them. I've thought about this a lot because, I make small movies in Canada. This movie doesn't have any, we've got some actors who have been on TV, but we don't have any name cast. It's hard to get these movies out there. And you think, okay, well, how can you get enough people or the right people, to see these sort of things? I wish I knew, but I mean, I have this dream or this thought, maybe naively, that art can make change and by influence. And so I guess it's for me, it's a community thing from my end. So it's eyeballs, and then people watching the whole movie to the end, to the last frame, and then caring. That's that. I think that's I'm not an expert. I don't have any power or influence, but I can try to do that part. And I think it's amazing what you folks are doing. It's I was lucky enough during the process of preparing for this film to talk to folks who are doing this work and folks in encampments, and it's like, man, this is your cousin, this is your uncle, this is your, these are people just figuring out, like, it's what you said, Tanya. It's like the thing that struck me, and I knew it, but in talking to 20 people at once in an encampment, almost sort of like a circle, like, all right, let's get as much information about how we can represent you honestly as possible. The main thing was like, okay, well, I get up and I got to think about how I'm going to get, okay, am I going to get water first, or am I going to go try to get down to the laundry first to do this? And it's like, well, yeah, you think about it, like every second of your day is caught up in survival and you're exhausted. Like that's, people think like, oh, this person's unhoused, they're not trying very hard. Like, it's just crazy to me, because when you talk to folks who are unhoused and or in encampments, they're working all day. They don't work for 8 hours. Like, they work every second, then they try to get some sleep. And if it's the winter, they have an aluminum can and some pure alcohol and do something very dangerous just to stay warm. So it's just anyway, like it's just when people start have that attitude about people, they're not trying hard enough. It's just crazy. They're trying. These folks are trying so hard. They're working so hard every day.
Thank you, Taylor. I'll just open it up now. I don't see any other questions that have been submitted, but any closing thoughts, any questions that you would have for one another, anything that you'd like to say?
I just wanted to thank Taylor again, like very from the bottom of my heart, for making a movie like this. It means a lot, especially to someone that's went through homelessness, for it to be out there and people to actually get eyes on it and see that. And you showed very well how it was one simple decision like him thinking that he's better and he wants more. And then that caused the downfall of everything for him. And at the end, he realizes, like, I was content. He had everything he wanted. He didn't need more. But in the like at the moment, he did. He didn't realize. Like, I think it was very good for you to put the depiction on TV for people to be able to actually watch it. Maybe make them like second guess or double think things.
Thank you, Tanya.
I want to echo my thanks to Taylor as well for this film, because it very honestly depicts something, like I said, of a character that is just absolutely likable and you care about him. And to be able to humanize this story. But Tanya, you are so brave. You are amazing and incredibly resilient. And I know someday, if you want it, if you allow it, someone should depict your story in film as well. And I think film and storytelling are just incredibly powerful because they're not just numbers on a piece of paper, right? The ability to share is hard. It's an incredibly generous gift that you give others. It's not something that just anyone can do. But in there is also, like I said, the solutions. And I think it's it's not just a percentage, it's not just a stat. And we can't ever lose sight of that, and we can't let people lose sight of that. So, everyone here plays a role. What does advocacy look like? And we all have different roles, and we all have different lanes, and we can travel through that, and it's exhausting, but every little bit makes a huge amount of difference. So thank you so much to everyone here.
Thank
I
you.
just want to I just want to echo thank yous to all of you as well. I mean, I want to recognize that I'm dipping my toe in. I
Mm.
I make movies, I show up, I act in movies, and I'm just dipping my toe in for a minute for like to do a little bit of a part. But you're doing this every single day, fighting for this good fight, and so it's incredible because that I don't know if people recognize how intense that is. When we talk to the folks at Fresh Start in St. John, it's like you're warriors out there. You're kind of like, you're doing the mental and emotional and physical labor that is, I don't think people recognize how hard this work is and what, geez, Tanya, what you've done. It's an incredible feat, and not in like a inspiration porn way, in like a real friggin', salt of the earth, working your butt off kind of way. And so, I just want to recognize I'm just dipping my toe in. You guys are, you're kicking butt out there. So
Yeah, thank you, each of you. I think you're all kicking butt out there in your various different ways. And I think it's a real joy to have brought you together for this discussion today. Thanks to each of you for sharing so much. Thank you, Tanya, for just carving out an hour of your birthday to spend with us here. I really hope that the rest of your day goes well. Um, Marie-Josée, thank you so much for all that you do and for taking time today to be here. And Taylor, for the film, again, for those that have not yet seen it, if you go to the Human Rights Commission's website at humanrights.novascotia.ca, click on the picture of Taylor there from the film. You'll find a link and a code where you can go online starting tomorrow until the 21st and to watch this film. Please tell your friends, tell your family, share the film and look for opportunities to see it, hopefully in theaters and in schools, maybe someday too, Tanya. Thank you all very much. Thank you to our interpreters, and for those that were in attendance, the recording will be posted later this afternoon. Thank you again, everyone.
Thanks for having us. Take care, everyone.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.